Welcome, guys, to the Balanced Business Dad. Again, this is Dustin Hogue, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, RJ Campbell. Remember, this is a conversation that focuses on the balance of the important pillars of the life of the everyday dad. Those pillars include faith, health, marriage, fatherhood, brotherhood, and career or business. Guys, this is episode 6. Thank you for sticking with us this long. And today we're going to go over what we like to call the third pillar of balance. So remember, if we back up, we have these pillars, which are faith, health, marriage, fatherhood, brotherhood, and then your career or work, however you want to call it. And right now, guys, we're going to go over marriage. I think this episode could go a couple different ways. It could go really deep, as marriage is and should be pretty deep, or we can have some fun with it too. I'm going to assume it's going to go a little bit of both.
I'm voting for fun. My notes make it look like it's going to be deep, but we're going to keep it away from that and make it fun.
Right. Well,
it's marriage.
If it's always awkward, we can always just joke about it, right? So marriage. I have been married 7 years this coming September.
And RJ have been married 34 years this coming August.
That's a really long time.
It is a long time.
That is awesome. So,
and I will point out also, as I interrupt,
yeah,
my wife and I will be together over 40 years. We dated about 7 years.
Wow. And I am not even 40.
Dustin and I joke about that all the time. He wasn't even born when I met my wife,
right.
I don't think.
1983, so is when I was born. So
yeah, and my wife and I met in October of 1981. So 41 years at the end of this year. I know that's crazy. That's not something we're planning to talk about, but that's just one of those crazy numbers when you think about it.
Yeah, that's
just a long time
ago. That kind of segues into this. So a lot of you guys maybe have heard, RJ and I, we worked together, but we got close when I started coaching him on real estate, and then just kind of became better friends than we ever did when we worked together. But one of the things is I've always looked to RJ as a mentor, as a husband and a father. So I love that we're able to talk about, well, a lot of these pillars together, but especially this one, because I see him and his wife that have been together for 41 years, which is incredible. 41 years, which is absolutely incredible. But I don't know, they still like each other. I've seen married couples who don't like each other after a couple months.
Good point. That is true.
So I love seeing that. But I have some notes. RJ has some notes, and I think we're just going to jump into it right now and see which way it takes us.
Yep.
But the first one is with marriage, guys. My first key word I wrote down here is priority. So many of us, and again, I have small kids. RJ has kids that are a little younger than me. But the priority can't be the kids. And I know people give kickback on that and stuff like that, but the reality of it is, which RJ is a prime example of that, your kids are only with you for a short time.
It's true.
Your wife's with you till the end, right? Or that's the meaning. That's the vow I took.
That's the goal.
So I think that's something to always talk about is your wife does need to be the priority, not the children, or your spouse does need to be the priority, not the children in the household, and make sure that you're making time for that.
That's a hard thing to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we never had that, my wife and I, that conversation while we had kids. We've probably never had it now. Never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Because the kids are such a big part of your life, and they're so important when they're young. Your marriage really goes from the two of you to being focused on the children. It's everything about raising the kids, keeping the kids safe. Well, yeah, you just forget that the marriage, too, I think by dumb luck, our marriage survives all that. And when I say ours, I think by a lot of marriages get lucky that they survive it because you don't really make it that priority. You don't have as many of the date nights and things like that.
Right. Well, we're not necessarily going to talk about the fatherhood, but the reality is you make people.
Yeah.
Right? So you and your spouse, you made a person.
Right.
And now you got to keep that person alive. You got to keep them happy.
They want to be fed constantly.
There's a lot going on there, which, of course, is going to switch your priority, if you will. But we got to constantly remember that. And I've had a lot of mentors and coaches and people I followed and stuff like that that has reminded me of that. And I love that. And it's something I strive for on a daily basis. So, talking about that, RJ, do you think you guys did keep the marriage a priority when your kids were young?
I would say if we did, it was by dumb luck. Really? It wasn't by planning. We never had that discussion that's what we would do. We always went out, but the kids were involved there too. We always think about it. When our kids were young, and it's because our parents were this way, we went out to dinner every Friday night.
Okay.
But the kids went with us. But I grew up in a big family. I have 5 older sisters. So there are 6 of us. My 5 sisters are very close in age. It's a little bit of a gap before me, not big. But my parents were big on taking us all out. And we're talking about when we moved here to Missouri. I was a young kid, but my sisters spent most of their time. We lived in New Jersey, just outside New York City. And on the weekends, my dad he'd get a limo. Everybody get dressed up, and he'd take everybody out to dinner in the city.
Wow.
Everybody.
Wow.
However many kids there were at the time. They were big on that. We were always a part of everything they did, and I think he just loved showing off his 5 daughters.
Yeah.
So we went out every Friday night, but the kids went with us.
But the kids went with you.
So it was kind of a date night, but the kids were there. So maybe that was part of it. In that way, you're keeping the marriage alive, but it's not something that we really talked about, that we focused on.
Yeah. Obviously, I haven't been married as long yet. My wife and I, it's something that we do a lot. We do vacation a lot with and without the kids. We're blessed, and I think do you have the support group? Do you have the help? I'm extremely blessed. My wife and I are extremely blessed that I have. I come from a divorced, parents, so I have 4 parents, is what I always say. So I'm blessed. My parents are extremely involved in my children's life. I mean, literally right now, as we're recording this, my 2 children are with my parents getting ready to go on their week-long summer vacation with my parents.
How nice is that?
Right. So we get that, and we're able to schedule a couple weekends a year and a couple actually good vacations a year without the kids because the grandparents are there with us. And I think that helps keep our marriage alive. We focus on there's a joke called it's a trip when you bring the kids and it's a vacation when you don't bring the kids, right?
I can attest to that one. Sure. That makes absolute sense.
So we have a lot of trips and we also have a lot of vacations, and we're extremely blessed. But that has been a focus of mine, probably because of my programming. I came from a divorced family, and that I knew going into this is forever.
Yeah.
I got married at a much later age, 32, I guess, right before I turned 33. I had to do the math earlier. Where my parents got married, they 21, 22 years old, right? So it was much different. But I knew going into this, going to make the marriage and going to work on the marriage.
That's what's so different now. I mean, our kids are getting married got married older. All their friends are getting married older. Almost all of them are living together ahead of time. That's just common now.
Yeah.
We didn't, but not that that's judging that one way or the other, but it was different. My wife and I got married 2 years out of college.
Yeah.
And thought that was old. Or 25 or whatever we were when we got married, 26, 25 and 26, something like that. Yeah. I was in college longer than people are supposed to be, so my number's higher.
Yeah.
But, we're looking back on it now, and God, we were just kids.
Yeah. 25 when you guys got married might have been rock bottom for me, honestly. It was like 24 or 25 when I was not in a very good situation.
Not the time you were thinking about being married.
Yeah, exactly.
Not at all.
The second keyword I wrote down on my notes when we were going to, talk about this episode was partner. Now, I've been self-employed as a business owner for about the last 10 years. So everything in business, but everything in life, I make sure that my wife and I are partners in. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of different businesses, and I make a lot of decisions, but I will never make the decision without getting her buy-in. And, we buy houses for a living. I still, to this day, talk to her about every house that we're going to buy. She doesn't care what I buy, right? It's we have that. But in my world, I need to get her buy-in before we're saying we buy that. And it's a partnership on parenting. Even if we disagree on how to parent at that time, we have to come with a solid foundation and a solid ground of the parenting. Mm-hmm. And the partnership, I think, is key. And I love the idea of a partnership because then we're working towards a common goal. I've seen so many relationships and so many marriages where you start your morning, you kiss your spouse goodbye, and you leave, and you go work on whatever you're working on that day. And then you come home, you parent the kids, if you will, and then, all right, now you're coming back together for 30 minutes before you go to bed.
Right.
So we've been pretty blessed, and I've been able to focus where I want it as a partnership. So, RJ, you obviously worked in corporate America a lot longer than I did. Mm-hmm. You guys kind of had that. Explain how that worked for you.
We did.
Guys.
Yeah. You're the classic. We're the example of most of us are.
Yeah.
You went to work. My wife went to work. You come home at the end of the day. You're making dinner. And, hey, how was your day? Great. Fine. Yeah, it was a good day. What'd you do? Same stuff. Just work. There's no real detail.
Right.
Hey, she doesn't have any idea what I did
right.
for 35 years. I don't know what she does. because you just, nobody knows what their spouse. It's like knowing what your dad did for a living.
Right.
I mean, unless your dad did something you can truly understand,
Right.
like a real job, like he was a carpenter,
Right.
a bricklayer, a plumber, then you knew what he did. Otherwise, if they worked on a white collar job, you have no idea what your parents.
Right.
They told you what they did.
An auditor,
Doesn't make
right.
any
Yeah.
sense. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a corporate auditor. Oh, great. I just heard. I have no
Yeah.
idea what the hell those two words mean when you put them together.
Right.
So we were like that. We didn't, you didn't make any decisions during the week together on that stuff because you were just in separate jobs.
Yeah.
Now that changed. 3 years ago, we started investing in real estate,
Yeah.
and now we're a partnership. We have a company that we are 50-50 partners in.
Yeah.
So we don't buy. I shouldn't say we never buy houses without ever asking somebody, because the third house that I bought over lunch, and then with Dustin from where we're eating lunch, called my wife and said, "Hey, guess what? I just bought a house." So no, that we joke about that one still, and she agreed it was a good house to buy. But yeah, we don't. Now it's all joint decisions and all those things. Everything.
Yeah.
We're partners.
Yep.
In all of-
I
in
think
these
it's
businesses.
so good, that personal growth, personal development together. My wife and I have done a lot of, personal growth seminars and things like that together too, and it's really helped. So the next one, which I think we could go, this could honestly be a whole episode by itself, but I do think it's very important to bring up. Intimacy in the marriage. There's always guy talk, and maybe I can say this word or not, but the coin phrase locker room talk about intimacy like it's not there. And we've heard it several times. Guys say that it's not there, it's not there. Yet I've made it a practice where I make sure it's there. And yes, guys, we're talking about sex. I'm going to say the three little words, sex. But it's something that needs to be talked about, because I think that is a foundation of marriage. And I think it needs to be talked about, because if there's a lack of it, one person or the other is probably going to feel upset about it, right? So I think, and we don't have to really go into that. That'll be a separate episode, but just some best practices to bring in intimacy into the marriage. I think I'm a firm believer, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. I think date nights have to be scheduled, completely scheduled out. How many times a month? One time a month? How many times a quarter? Whatever it may be that you can afford it, because they're not cheap, or I guess they could be, but mine aren't. And how many times you guys are doing it, right? And this is where we talked about. I think this is without kids.
Right.
One-on-one time. We also live in a world that we probably should leave our cell phones at home. And none of us will ever leave our cell phones at home.
No.
But at least flip them over, or don't put them on the table.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And we get to use the excuse, well, if the kids, need something.
Right.
They're fine.
They're fine.
Okay.
They're with somebody who is responsible.
Yeah, probably
they don't
more
need
responsible.
you.
Yeah.
They don't need you at the moment. We've gotten into that habit lately. My wife and I, even we just go out to dinner on the weekend. I always think, I'll just leave my cell phone in the car, but I don't. And I used to turn it over on the table.
Yeah.
You guys have seen Top Gun 2. You'll see what happens when you put a phone on the bar.
Right.
Don't do that in a Navy bar, by the way. But now I've gotten almost every time I hand them to her. Hey, put my phone in your purse. Because I don't need it. It doesn't need to be sitting here, because it's just a distraction. Even if it's turned upside down, you're still thinking about flipping it over and looking to see what's happened on your phone. So yeah, that's the thing. Now I just hand her the phone. It's like, I don't need it. Doesn't need to be sitting here.
Right. Love that. That's awesome. Sex nights. Is sex scheduled? We kind of had this conversation before we started recording here. Is it spontaneous, or do you schedule them? Or do you say, hey, we need to have sex a couple times this month or this week, or whatever your number is? I think obviously both's good, spontaneous. But if the spontaneity is not happening for a reason, I personally believe you should probably put it on the calendar.
That's a good point. Calendar sex.
Yeah. Sex nights, right? There's a book called, and you guys are going to laugh at me because this is the Balanced Business Dad, yet Girl Wash Your Face. And it's a book by the author Rachel Hollis. And I actually read it because my wife read it, and she really liked it. And in that book, they talk about her and her husband, when they were going through a rough patch or stuff like that, they committed to having sex every day for a month. Whether they wanted to, whether they didn't, whether it was fun to have at that moment in time or not, to really find out about each other's, sexuality. and I don't know the statistics in the book, but it was really interesting why they did it and what they learned from it. I would highly recommend that book to go read about it.
Yeah, that's weird. It's like, all right, very odd. I'd never heard of that book.
Yeah, it's and you probably wouldn't have heard of the book, right?
No,
not one you're looking at.
No,
but
it's not one that's on my list.
I would read it. But anyway, so sex nights. Want to talk about that, guys? Make sure it's on the calendar. And I would say, I think sex is a very important thing in marriage.
And the thing about that, when you say it's on the calendar, what that opened up is a conversation.
100%.
You know, there is nothing wrong. And again, I'm obviously older than Dustin.
Yes.
Kind of a half a generation, almost a full generation away. So it's not really something you talked about.
Right.
But it should be something that's an open conversation with a spouse.
Yes.
You know, just expectations. And guys, guess what? When she says no, don't sulk and pout.
Right.
There's nothing attractive about that.
Right.
That's not going to get you anywhere, by the way.
Right. That's not going to make it happen.
So really, by putting it on the calendar, to me, that just brings up that this is an okay conversation to have with your wife.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit of a, again, I guess it depends on your relationship and how it's been the whole time. But it could be an odd conversation. It could be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think that's only the first time. Yeah. I mean, it's a natural part of a marriage. You might as well talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
No, I agree. And I like that. It opens up the conversation. Now, again, me being much younger, I can literally put things on her calendar and it pops up.
Oh, yeah. I'd have to find a calendar in the drawer, get a pen, write it on there.
Yeah, so different ways. But I think you understand what we're talking about there. So a couple things we mentioned that we wanted to talk about on this episode, and this is kind of just going down a list on this episode, but I think it's good things to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Marrying early. That was a big thing in my life. So I will tell you, again, I came from a divorced household. My father has been married 3 times. His third one stuck. But his first one, who he procreated and had me with, they were married for 10 years. And then his second one was 8 months. And his third one, they're going on 20-something or 93. So a long time now, I guess. Yeah. But I always was afraid that the reason my parents' marriage didn't work is because they got married too young. Because you don't know who you are. At 22, I didn't know who I was. At 30 or 25, I didn't know who I was. Honestly, it really wasn't until my 30s I realized who I was, I think. And I met my wife 2 months before I turned 29. So
yeah, big difference. Yeah, I met my wife. She was a senior in high school, and I was a freshman in college.
Yeah.
That's the 7 years we dated until I was 25. She was 24.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we were really little kids when you think of it that way. So, we didn't think that was young back then. 24, 25. That was people, and you've been out of college for a couple of years. It did not seem young. It does now, looking back on it.
Yeah.
And when our kids get married, and our kids are the 2 sons that are married, so they get married around that age, a little bit older than that. Definitely older when they got married. So, yeah, that's young. I don't know what that is, if this podcast, because we're all older and most people are married probably that are listening to this, but it's just curious as to how does that affect it?
Well, does it affect you?
Does it affect it?
You mentioned something earlier, how you were listening to another podcast, but he said that my wife's been, and you can probably say this better than I can, but my wife's been married to 15 different men. They were all my name, but I have changed that many times.
Yeah. Yep. That's what this guy was saying. He had a great line that in a marriage, you need to stay curious.
Yeah.
It's just like when you started dating and, we had those inane conversations. We were just joking about, my wife and I were just talking about this too. You're just, what's your favorite song? Yeah. Hey, what kind of candy do you like? What do you eat for ice cream? Where do you like to go? What kind of movies do you watch?
Right.
What's your favorite Bible verse? Whatever that is.
Right.
He said you were hardly solving the world's problems when you're 17 or 18 and 19. Right. But you lose that curiosity over time because then you're just having normal conversations as adults, but you forget. We've changed a lot in 30 years and 40 years. So that's what this person was saying. You have to really just stay curious. You have to continue to have those conversations because you're a different person than you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a great point.
Yeah.
Another thing that I never thought about consciously.
Yeah, and it's all about still courting, right? I think that
it's courting.
It's the staying curious is truly courting your spouse still.
It is.
Yeah, which I love that. That's awesome. Talking about marriage, unfortunately, in the world we're in, a lot of people coincide that with divorce. So I think that's something to bring up. And we talked about this in a Bible study this past week, because divorce is something so big. And I don't know the answer here, but I do believe that I've seen blessings come out of divorce. So I will never judge that. Yet I know it's something that I do personally believe, and this is probably where it's going to get deep, but I do personally believe that people use divorce as an excuse because marriage is work. I don't believe marriage is hard. We had this conversation just a second
We did.
ago.
We talked about this.
I believe marriage is work, and I think anything that's good is work,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And if people don't want to use work, they can use divorce to get out of it.
Right.
I don't believe in that by any means. You have to work for this, but you have to work to stay in shape. You have to work to have a better career. You have to put in work. You have to put in effort. What you reap, you sow. Right? Did I say that right?
What you sow, you
What
reap.
you sow, you reap.
Yeah,
Same thing.
either way. I mean, we all know what he meant.
But that's the same thing. So what are you sowing when it comes to your marriage?
Yep.
Because that's what you're going to reap back,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. We were talking about this earlier, as Dustin and I were, that one of my pet peeves about when people talk about marriage is that marriage is hard. And you'll hear that. And guys, if you're married, you've heard this. If you're newly married, people will tell you, and you hear the same inflection of voice. Well, marriage is hard.
Right.
Can't you just hear, Aunt Lulu saying that to you, or your grandmother, or whoever? Marriage is hard. Well, yeah, it's hard, but not in a bad way.
Right.
It drives me nuts when I hear that. I think about, Dustin talks about me being a bicycle rider, a cyclist. Yeah, if I go out with my buddies and ride 60 miles on my bike on a Saturday morning, it's hard, but it's good hard.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Right.
When you head to the gym because it's lifting day, yeah, that's hard, but you look forward to it.
Right.
It's good work. That's the way Dustin said. Marriage is work. And yes, it's hard, but it's not hard like Aunt Lulu said.
Right.
Marriage is hard. Well, yeah, no, it's not. Whatever.
Right.
It is. It's just good work. It's hard because you're working on something good.
Yeah, so true. And our thoughts eavesdrop on ourselves, right? So if we're putting out to the world that this is hard, guess what's going to happen?
Exactly.
Right? It's going to be hard.
It's going to be really
I gotta
hard
tell
the
you,
whole time.
Marriage is amazing.
Yeah.
I've been single and I've been married. I choose marriage.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. I choose marriage.
We choose it every day, by the way.
Every day you choose. I mean, we had this, again, at this Bible study we were talking about. In the beginning, yes, you're in love. And I will never take that away from someone, but you're really in lust, right? The lust probably overdoes the love, if you will.
Right.
Now we are choosing to be in love.
We are choosing to be in
working
love.
To be in love every day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
Because the lust part has long since ebbed, and it ebbs and flows, but it's ebbed.
Yep.
It's not lust anymore. You know the person.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I don't know. Titillation is probably the wrong word. It's just funny words. I want to say it anyway, because it makes me laugh every time I say it. But that part is gone because you know the person now, and so now you literally, and my wife and I, we talk about this every day. I choose to love that person.
Absolutely.
As opposed to going and searching for someone else because it's new and fun and different, and I think that's where. When marriages lead astray that way, it's because you want that lust feeling back again. Because you haven't had that in a lot of years.
Right.
But you have something that's a whole lot better. So we talk about this all the time. Is that you choose every day to be in love because you're in love for different reasons.
This is reminding me of a country song, and it's going to upset me because I can't think of it. But a good country song. But it's the husband and wife are laying in bed, and the wife asks, one of those wife questions. What would you do if I wasn't around or if I wasn't there tomorrow?
I'd work on my golf game.
Yeah.
I'd eat more fried chicken, drive-through fried chicken.
Exactly.
I'd do some deep-sea fishing. I'd have my muscle car. I don't remember that. I don't know that guy's name.
That's the song.
But then at the end, he says, you know what?
I'm not good at golf. I don't need any more fried chicken.
I don't need any more fried chicken.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah. I'd rather have you.
Yeah. I'd rather have you over all of that.
I'd rather all those things. It's a great song.
Yeah.
We'll probably put it in the show notes because nobody really probably cares.
And I don't know.
How lovely, Bryce.
So do I. But anyway, the last thing I wanted to talk about was role models. I talked about RJ is a role model when it comes to being a husband and a father to me. And I think the really time I realized that I was actually visited his church. And it was me, him, and his wife. And I looked over and they were holding hands. My wife and I don't hold hands, but not that means anything. But I remember looking over and him and his wife were holding hands. I'm like, man, because we all know they're old. We just talked about that. And they're still holding hands.
She was holding me up.
That's something there, guys. They still like each other. Out of my subdivision, every single morning, rain, shine, sleet, snow, whatever, there's probably a 95-year-old couple who's walking every morning hand in hand. I'm like, man, I don't even know them, but they're role models to me.
Right.
And I think that is something that we have coaches for everything. I have a lot of different coaches, business coaches, health coaches, whatever it is. We should have a mentor when it comes to our marriage.
We should. We don't have
we're
that.
looking up to. you might not have it that you know about it, but you model it off someone. Your parents, her parents, whatever it may be, you do model it off of someone. The Bible, right? Because,
Right.
I know you follow that. You do model it in a way. I think sometimes we just have to think about where does our perception and our model of marriage come from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I never really thought about it. Dustin asked me who my role model was for our marriage. And I don't come from a family of divorce.
Right.
So my parents were married. They've both passed away, me being the youngest of 6 kids, but they were married for a long time. And I have 5 older sisters. All 6 of us are on original marriages. We're hundreds of years into marriage at this point with 6 of us.
Right.
They're considerably older than I am. So it's a very foreign thing to us. My in-laws, same way. My in-laws have been married forever.
Yeah.
So all of my role models that way of marriage, and I'd say it's both. For me, it's going to be my parents and probably my in-laws.
Yeah.
Because they're like a second set of parents to me. I've been with my wife a long time.
Yeah.
And my 5 big sisters and my 5 brothers-in-law. And
Yeah.
we're all really close. In that way, and this is, way off topic, it's a strange family that I live in that way. Because my 5 sisters are only like 8 years in age difference from top to bottom. They're really close. And 2 of them married guys that were best friends. So, but the other ones, we have guys who are not even from the same town we grew up in. And the 6 brothers-in-law are so tight. Yeah. We get together every year. We go on a golf trip in the spring. It all started with just the 6 brothers-in-law.
Yeah.
And the only thing these guys have in common is they married Campbell girls.
There you go.
And so I've never had a brother. I only have sisters. So now I have 5 others, not to mention 2 on my wife's side too. But, yeah, so they're all role models to me because they all adore their wives, or at least they do around me, and they're my sisters, and that's pretty important. So I have a lot of good role models.
Yeah, so you have a lot of good role models. You just don't look at them as role models.
Nope, never really thought about it until you asked me the question, who's your role model for a marriage?
And I think that goes into my programming is because I had to go out and look for it. Again, my parents are phenomenal, and I'm blessed with 2 phenomenal, I hate the word step-parents, but bonus parents, if you will.
Bonus parents.
It comes with a stepdad and a stepmom. And they've all taught me something different, but I did have to go out and I would say look for that. Now, the second marriages of my parents, or my dad's third, has lasted a really long time. 30 of my mom and stepdad have been together 20-something years, and my dad and stepmom, same thing. So I've got to see how they've put it together and made the second one or third one work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think role models are important, and I think I believe in relationship coaches. My wife and I have never necessarily had that, but I don't think you go get a coach when there's an issue.
Yeah, that's what we do with marriage.
Correct. I've known a couple coaches that I've had in the past, had a relationship coach or a marriage coach, whatever you want to call it, not because things were bad, but because they wanted to make it better. And I had so much respect for that. And I think that could be an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah, it would, because then the spouse is assuming there's something wrong.
Exactly.
But yeah, we have business coaches and we have life coaches. We have health coaches. Dustin has a lot more. He's really much more of a believer in coaching. Well, I believe in it. I've just never done it.
Right.
So I shouldn't say it that way. But we know when you get for a marriage, then it's called a marriage counselor.
Exactly.
It's not a coach.
Right.
It's because things went bad.
Yeah.
And so now we're asking for outside help. Why wouldn't we do that up front?
Yeah.
Hey, we
How do
should
we
get a
make it
marriage
better?
coach. We need a coach.
Yeah.
Tim Grimmett, who you've listened to, was on a previous podcast as an amazing life coach. He and his wife would be fantastic marriage coaches.
They actually are.
And they do that.
They have Date Your Spouse, I think, is a program they put through, and we can put his link or his name and stuff like back into the show notes. And there's a few other ones I've had that Garrett White has a podcast, I think, Date Your Wife or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of different help you can find with that if that is something you're looking for. One other thing I want to mention that's something that not necessarily, well, maybe it did help our marriage, but it wasn't a problem that needed to be helped. But I highly recommend it to everyone, is the 5 Love Languages, the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because we do all speak a different love language.
That we do.
And I think we're going to close off there because we've kind of went on a lot of rambling here today, guys.
We're all over the place for 30 minutes.
But marriage is kind of a ramble. Because every day is going to throw you something different.
Yes. No script. There's no
Right.
plan.
It's no plan, and it's work, but it's amazing work.
Yep.
But learn how your wife receives love, or your spouse receives love, and how they show love, and that's going to help the marriage too. And I would highly recommend that book, The 5 Love Languages, and that's where I'm going to close off, guys. Again, it's Dustin Hogue with the Balanced Business Dad, my co-host RJ Campbell. Guys, let's carry on this conversation. You can get a hold of us at take it away.
Our Facebook page,
Yep.
which is facebook.com/thebbdad.
Yep.
Right? Did I get it right this time?
think
Hey,
so,
I got it.
yeah.
And by the way, we put all this in the show notes. You don't have to worry about it. But always, and on our website, The Balanced Business Dad.
Yep.
But do the Facebook page if you want to communicate with us. Send
Yep.
us a message there, post on there, then we'll respond. That's the easiest one. But yeah, thebalancedbusinessdad.com, and that's where you'll find everything. And wherever you got this podcast, like we ask, rate, review, subscribe. That helps us a lot, gets the word out, get some other guys that want to listen to something like this for us to ramble for 30 minutes on marriage without any, I don't know that we even said anything. But
Right. But I think this is good, guys, because remember, this is all about balance, and marriages has to be the balance. Because the marriage is going to be the longest one out of everything we're putting here besides faith and really besides health. So I take that back. This is the third pillar because of that.
yeah, these three, the first three are permanent. I didn't think about
Yeah.
it that way. The first three, these are your whole life.
Yeah.
Faith, health, and marriage.
Yeah.
The
Your spouse
other
is gonna
ones,
be around
fatherhood,
longer than
brotherhood,
brotherhood.
and work.
Yeah.
Those are all really part-time.
Right. It's weird. It's like we put these in order for a reason.
Huh. I don't know how that happened.
Weird. Guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, please share this with our other brothers, our other dads out there that are looking for balance. We're not sure if it's attainable, but at least we strive for it. Again, stay balanced, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.